Chapter 141. One of Leslie's well-dressed friends suddenly asked, "Bianca, why don't you open them now? We're all curious to see what everyone got you." Several others chimed in, agreeing enthusiastically. Leslie's circle was made up of wealthy, influential people. They had spent good money on their gifts, and naturally, they wanted to show off in front of Bianca. As for whether it might embarrass those who couldn't afford expensive presents, that wasn't their problem. To them, if you were broke, you deserved to be exposed. Humiliation was just a reminder that you didn't belong in their world. Bianca hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. But with Leslie and his friends pressuring her, and with no one daring to object, she was left with no choice. Reluctantly, she agreed. One by one, she started unwrapping the gifts. The first one she opened was a sleek little box from one of Leslie's friends. Inside was the latest smartphone, a high-end model that cost a fortune. Gasps filled the room. If Leslie's friend was giving gifts like this, just how loaded was Leslie himself? Anyone hoping to get into his circle had better be prepared to spend big. Meanwhile, those who had brought more modest gifts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even Thomas's face darkened. His gift had been decent, but it now looked embarrassingly underwhelming compared to a brand new iPhone. Bianca was just as surprised. She frowned slightly and said gently, "This is too much. I can't accept something this expensive." The guy just laughed. "Come on. I'm giving this to Leslie's future wife. There's no such thing as too expensive." His words sent a ripple of tension through the room. It was clear he was pushing the idea that Bianca and Leslie were practically a done deal. After that, everyone else felt the pressure. The second gift was a high-tech smart water bottle worth around $300. It wasn't as flashy, but definitely practical. It brought some relief. At least not everything had to be ridiculously extravagant. The next few gifts followed a similar pattern, ranging from a couple hundred to about $500. Some were elegant, some were useful, but nothing too over the top. The tension eased slightly as it became clear that not everyone had dropped a fortune on their presents. But Earl wasn't relaxed at all. Even the cheapest gift so far had been at least $100. His gift definitely didn't make the cut. He could already imagine the looks he'd get when his turn came. The judgment, the whispers. Earl was never afraid of being embarrassed. But this was different. This was Bianca. And Faye was right there, too. No way was he getting humiliated in front of them. Especially with Leslie and Mia waiting for the perfect opportunity to tear him down. Then, it was Wenzel's turn. His gift was a high-end music box worth about $500. It could connect to a computer and function like a mini karaoke machine. Not bad, definitely. Thoughtful and not cheap. Then came Thomas's turn. He confidently presented a crystal bracelet that sparkled under the lights. Smugly, he explained, "This is a limited edition swanky piece I brought back from Euphoria. You can't even buy it here. It's worth at least $3,000. The girls at the table swooned over it, gushing about how perfectly it suited Bianca. Next was Faye. She had picked out a designer handbag worth around $2,000, something Bianca had always wanted. The moment Bianca held it, her face lit up. She loved it. Then came Leslie's gift. And this one, everyone knew it would be big. Just from the elegant wrapping, it was clear whatever was inside was expensive. Bianca carefully opened the box. Inside lay a sleek car key. The unmistakable BMW logo gleamed. Under the light, a sharp gasp swept through the room. Even some of Leslie's rich friends looked stunned when they found out Leslie had gifted Bianca a BMW car. Chapter 142. Seeing the shock on everyone's faces, Leslie's chest swelled with pride. He gazed at Bianca with a deep, affectionate look and said softly, "Bianca, I picked out this pink Z4 just for you. I hope you'll like it." But to everyone's surprise, Bianca remained calm. She shook her head gently. "Leslie, this is too much. I can't accept it." A stunned silence fell over the room. It was a BMW, and she was turning it down. Earl, however, immediately realized something. Bianca and Leslie weren't actually together. If they were really a couple, there was no way she would reject a gift like this. And from the way Leslie's expression faltered, it was clear he hadn't expected this response either. His carefully planned moment had just gone off script. But he wasn't ready to back down. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. Inside was a ring, its surface gleaming under the lights. Leslie lifted it high and, in front of everyone, made his move. "Bianca," he said earnestly, "this ring is for you. I'm not asking you to marry me, just to be my girlfriend. I love you, truly." The entire room erupted. Gasps, whispers, excited shrieks. No one had expected Leslie to pull a public confession like this. Cheers and applause broke out, and the energy in the room shot through the roof. Earl's fingers curled into fists under the table. His gut tightened. He was hoping Bianca would have her head on straight right now. She couldn't say yes to this guy. Then, someone in the crowd shouted, "Bianca, you and Leslie are perfect together. You have to say yes. Yeah, say yes, say yes, say yes." Leslie's friends seized the moment, chanting in unison and pressuring her. The voices grew louder. The entire room was now urging her to accept. Bianca's face paled, her fingers clutching at the edge of the table. She hesitated, looking around the room before lowering her gaze. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "Leslie, I'm not ready yet." A wave of silence crashed over the crowd. Saying she wasn't ready was just a polite way of saying no. Leslie's expression flickered. His jaw tensed. "Bianca, can't you see how much I care about you?" His voice was more urgent now. "Why are you hesitating?" His friends immediately jumped in to support him. "Bianca, come on. Leslie's everything a girl could want. He's rich, successful, and crazy about you. Do you know how many girls would kill for this chance?" Bianca shook her head, looking visibly uncomfortable. "It's not that just. I wasn't expecting this." Earl, who was watching her carefully, could tell that she wasn't entirely opposed to Leslie, but she was definitely not ready for this level of commitment. Maybe deep down, she wasn't even sure about him at all. And that realization made Earl feel a hell of a lot better. Leslie, however, struggled to keep his expression in check. His face darkened, then smoothed into something resembling composure. Forcing a calm smile, he said, "Bianca, take your time to think about it. I'll wait for you." Then, shifting gears, he turned to the crowd. "And to celebrate Bianca's birthday, I have a special gift for all of you. Tonight, I'm treating everyone here to the all-star concert at Eirene Music Academy. Anyone who wants a ticket can get one from my friends." The room exploded in excitement. That concert was impossible to get into. Even with 5 times the price, tickets were nearly unobtainable, and Leslie was just handing them out. Then again, the guy had just casually offered Bianca a BMW, so clearly, money was nothing to him. And finally, it was Earl's turn to present his gift. Chapter 143. As Earl's gift was finally brought forward, Wenzel couldn't resist teasing him. "Earl, what kind of big surprise did you prepare for the campus queen?" He had seen Earl borrow money earlier and figured Earl must have gone all out on a gift for Bianca. The thought made him curious, and a little amused. Faye and Bianca also turned their attention to Earl's gift, eager to see what he had picked out. Bianca carefully unwrapped the package, handling it delicately as if afraid of damaging whatever was inside. Meanwhile, Earl felt a sinking feeling in his gut. Then, under everyone's watchful eyes, Bianca pulled out a watch. At first glance, it looked fine, but a closer look revealed rough engravings and an unimpressive finish. It was clear that this watch wasn't expensive. The room fell silent for a split second. Then came the inevitable reactions: shock, snickers, and even outright disdain. Earl already felt awkward, but Mia's next words made him want to disappear. "Wait a second," she said, narrowing her eyes. "I think I've seen this watch before. Oh, isn't this from that little shop on campus? You can buy one for, like, $20. Thomas turned to Earl with a smirk. "Be honest, did you really get this from the campus strip mall?" Earl wanted to lie, just something, anything, to get out of this moment. But then he saw Bianca's eyes, clear, calm, and expectant. And suddenly, he couldn't do it. The whispers grew louder. The quiet snickers turned into full-blown amusement. Not wanting to leave a bad impression on Bianca or Faye, Earl explained, "Bianca, I actually wanted to get you something better, but I lent most of my money to a friend." Wenzel realized what Earl was talking about and quickly stepped in to back him up. "It's true, Earl spent everything on this gift. He even borrowed money from me just to grab a meal earlier." His intent was to show that Earl cared and that he had given everything he had. Faye, understanding Earl's situation, said gently, "Bianca, the watch does cost quite a bit." But Mia rolled her eyes. "Quite a bit, please. I know the shop owner. These watches cost, like, $10 to make. Even if you're broke, you could have picked something better." This just shows he doesn't care about Bianca at all. Thomas nodded in agreement. "Yeah, someone like that isn't even worthy of being Bianca's friend." Just as Earl's hands clenched into fists under the table, Bianca did something no one expected. She shook her head and held the watch in her palm, her fingers tightening around it. "I like it," she said softly. "Thank you, Earl." It was the first time she had ever thanked a guy so directly for a gift. But most people in the room believed she was just trying to spare Earl's dignity. No one thought she actually meant it. Mia scowled but dropped the subject, knowing she couldn't openly argue with Bianca. But Leslie's expression darkened. At this point, the gifts were mostly unwrapped. Earl was starting to feel out of place. He still had rehearsals to get to, and sticking around any longer was pointless. So he excused himself, saying he needed to use the restroom. As Earl left, Mia smirked as she said, "Pathetic. Couldn't even buy a decent gift and had to make up some excuse about lending money." "What a joke." One of Leslie's friends chimed in, "Or maybe he really did spend all his money on the gift. In that case, his family must be dirt poor." Another girl chuckled and added, "You guys know he used to chase after Belle, right?" "Yeah, that Belle, the classic rich girl. And he showed up wearing knockoff brands thinking he had a chance. She dumped him, obviously. But rumor is, he kept chasing after her like a lost puppy." Mia let out a sharp laugh. "Belle, oh, I know her. And him. He was never even in the running." Wenzel's fists tightened. He couldn't take the way they were talking about Earl. "Say what you want," he said firmly. "I know Earl. He's not cheap, and if he says he lent his money to someone, I believe him." The room stared at Wenzel. No one argued, but their expressions made it clear. They thought he was just as pathetic as Earl. A few minutes later, Earl returned from the restroom. He walked straight to Bianca. Chapter 144. Earl said to Bianca, "I've got something to take care of, so I'll be heading out now. Let's catch up another time." The people around them exchanged knowing looks. At least he knew when to leave. He clearly wasn't welcome here, so he was smart enough to make himself scarce. Bianca, understanding Earl's position, gave him a small nod and stood up. "I'll walk you out," but Earl quickly waved her off. "No need. Stay and enjoy the party with your friends." Just as he was about to leave, the hotel doors swung open. A young man walked in, carefully supporting a middle-aged woman carrying a wooden shoulder pole with baskets hanging from both ends. He spoke gently to her, his tone full of concern. "Mom, take it slow. Watch your step." The woman wasn't that old, but years of hard labor had aged her beyond her years. Her skin was darkened from the sun, her face lined with deep creases from a life of struggle. The baskets she carried contained a bundle of blankets and some farm produce. Stepping into the lavishly decorated restaurant, the woman immediately grew uneasy. "Damn, this place looks expensive," she whispered nervously. "We can't waste money like this. Let's leave before we dirty their fancy carpets. I can just have a couple of scones." Samuel gently held her back and reassured her, "Mom, don't worry. The owner here is my friend. I get to eat here for really cheap." Earl squinted at the guy and suddenly recognized him. It was Samuel. Surprised, Earl called out, "Samuel, what are you doing here?" Samuel's head snapped up, and when he saw Earl, his face lit up with excitement. "Earl, you're here too. I'm just bringing my mom out for a nice meal. After that, I was planning to head to the dorm to find you." Upon hearing this, Samuel's mother, Meredith Zeller, glanced at Earl and asked him, "Sam, is this your classmate?" Samuel nodded eagerly, his eyes shining. "Mom, this is Earl, the friend I always talk about. He's the one who helped us when Dad was in the hospital. He lent me all the money we needed." The moment she heard this, Meredith froze, her eyes widening in shock. Then, without warning, she dropped to her knees with a loud thud. Her voice trembled as she choked out, "You're our savior. Thank you for helping our family. We owe you so much. Please, let me thank you." Before Earl could react, she reached for Samuel and pulled him down with her. "Sam, you need to bow to him. We have to show our gratitude properly." Earl panicked and said, "Mrs. McArag, no. Please, get up." He rushed forward, trying to help her up. "You don't need to do this. I was just giving a helping hand, it's no big deal." Samuel also hurriedly helped Meredith stand up straight, though she continued to wipe her eyes, overcome with emotion. Still sniffling, she clutched Earl's hands and said, "You don't understand, child. We truly don't know how to repay you. Sam's father, he passed away, but he left peacefully, knowing his son has a good friend like you. We'll never forget your kindness. If there's anything our family can do for you, just say the word." Earl shook his head firmly. "Please, don't say things like that. Samuel just hit a rough patch, that's all. It was the right thing to do. And don't call me your savior, just call me Earl. Samuel and I are friends. That's what friends do." She wiped her eyes again, smiling through her tears. "All right, Earl, we're still so grateful." Looking around, she suddenly seemed at a loss. She had nothing fancy to give him, nothing that could match the help he had provided. Then, her face lit up. She reached into one of the baskets and pulled out a handful of freshly harvested peanuts, still covered in dirt. "Earl, we don't have much, but these are homegrown peanuts. I roasted them myself. They're delicious." Some of the wealthier guests in the room wrinkled their noses at the sight of the dirt-streaked peanuts, but Earl didn't hesitate. He took one, cracked it open, and popped it into his mouth with a big smile. "Wow, these are amazing. Mrs. McArag, how do you know I love peanuts?" Meredith beamed. "If you like them, then take more." Before Earl could protest, she scooped another handful and shoved them into his pocket. Then another. And another. She did that until his pockets were completely stuffed. Chapter 145. Samuel stood there, his eyes glistening. He was overwhelmed with gratitude as he watched everything unfold. Wenzel suddenly shot up from his seat, his voice stumbling with disbelief. "Earl, you really lent him all your money. That's why you had nothing left for yourself." Samuel's face fell. "Earl, wait. Were you out of money?" Earl quickly shook his head, brushing it off. "Come on, don't be dramatic. It's not like I was starving." He nudged Wenzel lightly, signaling him to drop it. Wenzel caught the hint and shut his mouth, but the look in his eyes made it clear. His respect for Earl had just hit a whole new level. Bianca and Faye had been watching the entire scene. They weren't stupid, they could put the pieces together. Their expressions shifted when it all clicked. It was like reality had just slapped them in the face. Earl hadn't lied, he had really given all his money away. And from the way Samuel and his mother had reacted, it was obvious that Earl had given them a lot. This wasn't just some casual loan. It meant something. Bianca and Faye exchanged a glance, both remembering the time Earl had risked his life to save Bianca by the river. Back then, they had seen his courage. And now, they saw something even deeper, his character. Earl, meanwhile, casually told Meredith, "Mrs. McArag, Samuel's right. This place is great, and the prices aren't bad at all. Just relax and enjoy your meal." Then, turning to Samuel, he said, "I gotta go, but if you ever need anything, just let me know." Samuel nodded, watching as Earl walked toward the exit. He stood still, eyes following his friend's retreating figure. Bianca and Faye did the same. Just as Earl reached the door, a beam of sunlight poured in from outside, hitting his back. For a split second, it almost looked like he was glowing. Leslie, meanwhile, wasn't taking it so well. His face had been sour ever since Earl left. He had spent the entire night flexing his wealth, throwing expensive gifts around, making it crystal clear who was rich and who wasn't. And yet, in the end, it was Earl, the guy he had mocked, who had walked away with the most respect. Next to him, Mia scowled. So what? He's still broke. In today's world, being nice doesn't pay the bills. Her words hung in the air, but instead of backing her up, people just stared at her. Her tone, her attitude, it was disgusting. Faye frowned slightly, visibly displeased. She might not have romantic feelings for Earl, but they had grown up together. She wasn't about to let someone drag his name through the mud in front of her. Without another word, she turned to Bianca and said, "Bianca, I've got some things to take care of at school. I'll head out first. Let's catch up another time." Bianca nodded in understanding, but in the back of her mind, she regretted ever inviting Mia to her birthday in the first place. With Faye gone and Earl already out the door, Wenzel lost interest in sticking around, too. He stood up, stretching. "I think I'll call it a night as well. See you around, Bianca." One by one, other classmates followed suit. Nobody wanted to hang out with someone like Mia any longer than they had to. Leslie, however, tried one last move. "Bianca, why don't you come with us?" he suggested smoothly. "The concert's starting soon. We can go together." And just like that, the birthday party wrapped up. Those who still wanted to attend the all-star concert lined up to get their tickets from Leslie's friends. Outside, Earl's phone buzzed. It was Felix, urging Earl to hurry over, as, even though Earl was sole, the effect on stage was still an unknown factor. Chapter 146. The rehearsal was crucial. Any technical issues could be caught early and fixed in time. Worst case scenario, if something went terribly wrong, they could even resort to lip-syncing. Soul's mysterious identity had become one of the biggest talking points of the all-star concert. If anything went wrong, the backlash would be disastrous. By the time Earl arrived at Eirene Music Academy's backstage entrance, the place was already swarming with fans. And these weren't just students from the academy. They had come from all over the country. A group was already pushing against security, desperate to break into the venue. "We want to meet our idol. You can't keep us out. This is unfair. We have the right to get autographs. Let us in now. Soul, I love you more than life itself." The security was barely holding them back. Soul's fans were on another level of crazy. The moment word got out that Soul might be inside, the entire crowd went feral, shoving harder and screaming louder. Earl had always known Soul was getting popular, but even he hadn't expected this level of obsession. Student council members stood at the front, doing their best to maintain order. Two gorgeous women were stationed at the entrance, blocking the door with zero hesitation. If the crowd broke through, who knew what kind of madness would follow? As Earl approached, one of the women quickly stepped in front of him. She gave him a once-over, taking in his tall frame and sharp features. After a brief pause, her voice softened slightly. "Hey, the artists are still rehearsing. If you're here to see your favorite singer, you'll need to wait in the fan zone over there." She gestured to the side area, where dozens of other fans had already gathered. "Once rehearsals are done, they'll come out and sign autographs." Earl smirked and pointed at himself. "I'm here for the rehearsal." The words barely left his mouth before a wave of stunned silence hit. For a second, the woman just stared at him, blinking in confusion. Then, all around him, student council members exchanged glances before suddenly bursting into laughter. "Dude, are you feeling okay? Wait, which superstar are you again? Why haven't we ever heard of you? Only A-listers are allowed back there. Who even are you?" The woman in front of him gave him a sympathetic look, like she was dealing with a delusional fan. "We've had a lot of people try to sneak in today," she said, patiently. "I get it. You're excited to see your favorite singers. But please, just cooperate and wait over there, okay?" She clearly thought he was just another desperate fan trying to bullshit his way in. Because every artist in that rehearsal hall was a massive star. And while Earl was good-looking and had a certain presence, he didn't look like any known celebrity. Earl sighed. He said, "I swear I'm here to rehearse." He instinctively reached for his pocket, thinking he could pull out some kind of proof, only to realize he had nothing. Felix never gave him a backstage pass. Before he could argue further, another woman, one with a cute, playful smile, grinned at him. "Hey, hotshot, do you even know who walks through this entrance?" She teased. "This is for the headliners. The big names. Backup dancers and opening acts don't come this way." It was clear, none of them believed him. And honestly, he couldn't even blame them. If he were in their shoes, he wouldn't believe it either. Chapter 147. Just as Earl was about to call Felix for help, Felix appeared from the hallway. He had already anticipated that Earl might have trouble getting past security, so he had come out to check. But he didn't come alone, he brought an entourage to make it clear just how important Earl was. The moment Felix saw Earl, he hurried over, half bowing as he ran. "My musical genius, my superstar, finally. We've been waiting for you. The whole show's riding on you, you're the grand finale." He grabbed Earl's hand without hesitation, ready to escort him inside. The two women at the entrance, along with the crowd watching nearby, froze. Their eyes widened in absolute shock. Superstar. Final act. Wait, did that mean? Still processing the words, the prettier of the two women stammered, "Mr. Chambers, wait, who is he?" Her name was Layla. Felix shot her a knowing grin. "You've always loved soul, haven't you?" He chuckled, then patted Earl's shoulder. "Well, here he is, right in front of you." Before Layla could react, Felix whisked Earl inside, leaving behind a group of students who looked like they had just witnessed the biggest plot twist of their lives. Silence hung in the air for a split second. Then, Layla finally snapped out of it, her voice trembling with disbelief. Did Felix just say, he's soul?" The taller woman, still stiff with shock, nodded slowly. I think I heard the same thing." Layla suddenly screamed and jumped up in excitement. "Oh, my goodness. Felix wouldn't lie. That means, he's really soul. And he's so good looking. He's just like I imagined." The other woman clutched her chest, still reeling. "His eyes, oh my goodness, his eyes. They're like the entire universe, so deep, so mesmerizing. He's even better than I imagined. And I actually talked to him." But the excitement quickly turned into regret. Layla suddenly groaned in frustration. "Damn it, I should have asked for a photo. Or his contact. What was I thinking?" Around them, the rest of the students finally exploded in disbelief. They had just let Soul walk right past them, without even realizing it. This was insane. It was a massive missed opportunity, and the realization hit them like a truck. Before long, the news spread like wildfire. More and more fans rushed toward entrance number 2, desperate to catch a glimpse of him. The crowd swelled, and within minutes, the metal barriers collapsed under the force of the stampede. The student council members, now panicked, linked arms to form a human barrier, struggling to keep the chaos under control. Meanwhile, still buzzing with excitement, Layla whipped out her phone and called someone. "Faye, you need to get back here, now. You won't believe who I just saw." Chapter 148. Faye was on her way back to campus when her phone rang. "Guess who I just saw?" The excitement in Layla's voice was impossible to miss. Before Faye could respond, Layla added, "Soul. I just saw Soul, the real Soul, and he's even hotter than I imagined. He's so much more attractive in person. And get this, he's actually really sweet. He's literally the perfect boyfriend material. I think I'm in love." Hearing that Soul had actually shown up, Faye's heart skipped a beat. This meant the whole mystery star hype wasn't just some marketing stunt by Starlight Entertainment. Soul was really here. Suppressing her own excitement, she laughed. "Damn, girl, you sound thirsty as hell. Why don't you just go shoot your shot? Who knows, maybe he'll fall for you." Layla sighed dramatically. "Yeah, right. A guy like that, he's gotta have a girlfriend already. Probably a whole lineup of them. I'll just admire from a distance. No point in dreaming about something that's never gonna happen. Some people were just out of reach, meant to be admired from afar, never to be touched." If Earl had heard this conversation, he would have laughed bitterly. Not only was he single, but he had also been brutally rejected multiple times. By Faye, by Anna, even by Belle. His track record with women was tragic at best. Outside, the frenzy over Soul's appearance was reaching new levels of chaos. Meanwhile, Earl followed Felix into the stunningly decorated rehearsal hall. The stage was immaculate, with state-of-the-art lighting and sound equipment. The whole place buzzed with activity as crew members rushed around, making final adjustments. At the front of the room, a group of established industry veterans sat together, waiting for their turn to rehearse. Big-name stars, top-tier producers, and executives, the kind of people most musicians only ever saw on TV. Felix took Earl around, introducing him to everyone. The moment these industry professionals realized who he was, many of them were shocked to find that Soul was a young man. His rise had been insane, and to reach this level at his age was almost unheard of. If he kept going at this pace, he wasn't just going to be successful, he was going to dominate the entire music scene. They went up to shake his hand, eager to establish connections. Others, however, only gave polite nods, clearly feeling a bit threatened. Among the crowd was a well-known director, a stocky guy in his 40s. He welcomed Earl enthusiastically and went over everything he needed to know about his performance. Finally, it was time to rehearse. One of the other performers finished their set, and the director signaled Earl to take the stage. With dozens of top-tier musicians and industry veterans watching, Earl picked up his guitar, tuned it carefully, and took a breath. Then, he started to play. His first note hit the room like a tidal wave. Even though this was his first time on a stage like this, he was completely unfazed. In fact, he sounded even better live than he did online. His early recordings, while powerful, had never been professionally produced. But now, with the best equipment and a full band backing him up, he was finally able to unleash his full potential. His voice, his presence, and his control over every note was flawless. No, it was beyond flawless. When he finished his second song, the entire room erupted into applause. Even the artists who had initially been skeptical couldn't help but acknowledge the raw talent standing before them. Felix and the director exchanged a relieved glance. Earl had just proven beyond a doubt that he was more than worthy of being the headline act. With rehearsals wrapped up, Felix and the director suggested grabbing dinner before the main event, the All-Star Concert. Chapter 149. Night quietly fell over Eirene Music Academy. Streetlights flickered on, illuminating the campus in a warm glow. For this concert, the campus had pulled out all the stops. The roads were lined with festive decorations, lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, and excitement buzzed through the air. An hour before showtime, the entire campus was already packed. Thousands of people filled every corner, students from nearby universities, fans from across the country, and even those without tickets who had come just for the atmosphere, hoping to catch a glimpse of their favorite stars. Outside the sports arena, massive banners of the performing artists were displayed. But without a doubt, the biggest and most eye-catching poster belonged to Soul. His stardom had reached a new level. Even though the poster only showed his silhouetted back, people still stopped in awe, taking pictures, some even posing next to it like they were meeting a legend. The streets leading to the stadium had transformed into a makeshift marketplace, with students seizing the opportunity to sell all kinds of merch, glow sticks, posters, light-up headbands, and collectible memorabilia. After rehearsals, Earl declined Starlight Entertainment's invitation to dine with the VIPs and instead opted for a quiet meal at Eirene Music Academy's cafeteria. With less than an hour before the concert, he wandered around the campus. Eirene Music Academy wasn't as large as Alnugo University, but it had a refined, artistic charm. The pathways were lined with tall trees, small scenic lakes dotted the campus, and every corner exuded a sense of creativity and passion. But the most striking part of the walk was the sheer number of stunning women. Earl had to admit the students here had insanely high standards of beauty. As he took in the scenery, his gaze landed on a small group standing on the library steps, a few men and women, clearly waiting for someone. At first, he only noticed them because they were all ridiculously good-looking. Then, he spotted someone familiar. It was Faye. Earl blinked. They had just seen each other earlier, and now, here she was again, right in the middle of Alnugo University's campus. But what really caught his attention was the guy standing next to her, Seth. Earl's expression subtly darkened. Seth was a snake, through and through. Back in Perthter City, the guy had already shown his true colors, and later, he had even set up Luca just to save himself. And now he was still hanging around Faye. Earl quickly brushed off the irritation. After all, Faye and Seth were both students under Donald, making them senior and junior classmates. It made sense that they would attend the concert together. Still, Earl had no interest in small talk, so he decided to walk away without saying anything. But just as he turned to leave, Faye's voice rang out behind him. "Earl, is that you?" He turned around, seeing the hint of surprise in her eyes. She looked genuinely pleased to run into him. Since she had already called out, ignoring her wasn't an option. Earl smiled and walked over. "Faye, didn't think I'd run into you again so soon." She folded her arms, tilting her head slightly. "You came all the way to my school and didn't even text me. Shouldn't I have been your tour guide?" There was a playful hint of complaint in her tone, but more than anything, her expression showed that she was seeing him in a new light. Especially after everything that had happened earlier, she was starting to realize that the guy she had once overlooked had far more layers than she had ever imagined. Chapter 150. Faye couldn't help but reflect on herself. She had seriously underestimated him before. Noticing her thoughtful expression, Earl simply smiled and politely asked who she was waiting for. Faye responded softly, "We're waiting for a friend. We're heading to the concert together." At that moment, Seth finally noticed Earl and his expression soured instantly. The memory of getting beaten down by Zane and Neil in Perthter City resurfaced, and resentment bubbled up inside him. He had wanted revenge ever since, but seeing Earl's taller, stronger frame, he quickly swallowed the thought. Taking another slap to the face was not on his to-do list tonight. Meanwhile, the other ladies in the group had taken an interest in Earl. One of them, a long-haired girl with an air of curiosity, leaned toward Faye and whispered, "Who is he?" "He's actually really cute." Eirene Music Academy was full of handsome guys, but Earl had something different. His presence, his sharp gaze, the way his eyes held something deep, almost like a universe of their own. There was something about him that drew people in. Faye smiled and introduced Earl as her childhood friend. They had gone to the same middle and high school. She also told the girl that Earl was the state's top-ranked student in math and science during the college entrance exams. Now, he was studying finance at Alnugo University, and on top of that, he played the guitar incredibly well. The moment she finished speaking, the lady's eyes lit up. Handsome, smart, and talented. Earl was practically a walking green flag. But before the conversation could continue, Seth suddenly cut in. "I'd hold off on the admiration if I were you," he said, crossing his arms. "You all assume he's impressive, but do you know where he comes from? His parents are farmers in the countryside. He grew up selling fruit in a roadside stall. It doesn't matter how talented he is, he's got no money, no future." His words hit the group like a bombshell. The ladies, who had just been impressed by Earl, suddenly froze, their interest dimming almost instantly. They had assumed a guy this well put together had a decent family background. But to hear that his parents were farmers, it was a reality check. Romance was supposed to be pure, free from material concerns. But the real world didn't work like that. Even university students, idealistic as they were, knew that love without stability was like a castle built on sand, it wouldn't last. Unless a guy was so insanely talented that success was practically guaranteed, most ladies weren't willing to take the risk. It was an ugly truth, but a truth nonetheless. However, the long-haired girl wasn't convinced. "That's not necessarily true," she shot back. "Faye literally just said he was the state's top student. That's proof of his ability. I believe he can make it if he's passionate about music." Seth smirked, shoving his hands into his pockets. "I highly doubt it. Name one successful musician who didn't have huge financial backing. Do you think talent alone is enough? Please. Without money, connections, and professional education, he won't even come close to reaching my level." And Seth had every reason to be confident. He was a trained vocalist, a student under Ronald, and had competed in national singing competitions, making it all the way to the finals. He had built his career step by step, through elite training and industry connections. Some random self-taught guitarist from a farm wasn't even a competition. Faye's face turned pale as she listened. As much as she hated Seth's arrogance, she couldn't deny that he had a point. From a professional standpoint, Earl wasn't even in the same league. She looked at Earl, worried that Seth's words might discourage him. But Earl's expression remained unreadable. Before he could respond, footsteps echoed behind them, followed by a smooth, deep voice.